Now, Nancy Pelosi, she was always concerned about absentee ballots and purging voting rolls until she became the speaker, with her fangs growing and her fingernails and her, she, back in 2005, had a totally different view of this. It's not that long ago, just 17 years ago. But George W. Bush was president, and of course, this irked her to no end. She's just a hack. She's just a political thug. That's all she is. She doesn't have a principled bone in her body. Power, power, power. That's all she cares about. And her city, well, it's going to hell. Their schools stink. The law enforcement is undermined. It's not a safe city, not even on Union Square anymore. You have drug addicts all over the place. You got human feces all over the place. You can't even walk your kids, your family through the center of the city anymore. I know. My wife and I were there a couple of months ago. It was terrible. A beautiful city like San Francisco. And it's not the only one. That's what she wants to do to America. Let's hear what she had to say 17 short years ago when it came to absentee ballots and purging voter rolls. Go.
As the Supreme Court noted, no right is more precious in a free country than that of having a voice in the election of those who make the laws under which, as good citizens, we must live.
No, I don't necessarily disagree that that's important, but the greatest right we have is the right to life. Go ahead.
Other rights, even the most basic, are illusory if the right to vote is undermined. I repeat, other rights, even the most basic, are illusory if the right to vote is undermined. The principle of one person, one vote is sacred in our country, and we must do everything to uphold it. Yet more than 225 years since our founding...
Even back then, she didn't know how to read a speech that was handed to her. Go ahead.
There are still legitimate concerns over the integrity of our elections and of ensuring the principle of one person, one vote, that every person has access to voting and that every vote will be counted. 20 years ago, I was chair of the California Democratic Party. It was our function, it was our purpose to remove obstacles of participation to voting. The greater responsibility, of course, was with the Secretary of State in our state and in states across the country who controlled the elections in the state. But we all, in all of our capacities, had a responsibility to remove, not throw up, obstacles to participation. I know that this issue is not just about counting votes, but what happens in all three phases, before, during, and after the election. And in all three phases, there were problems in this election in Ohio and elsewhere.
So she's doubting the 2004 election results of George W. Bush. It wasn't even that close. But they keep focusing on Ohio, that the vote in Ohio wasn't right. Wasn't right. They always challenge Republican victories in the presidential elections. They always have. And then they pretend January 6th was the greatest threat. Go ahead.
Before the election, there were complaints about absentee ballots that were requested but did not arrive. There were reports of registration problems and of improper purging of the voting rolls. And the Ohio Secretary of State made decisions about provisional ballots, partisan poll watchers, and paper requirements for registration forms that some found questionable.
Wow. Wow. Voter fraud, she's saying. Fraud by the Republican Party. She must be a kook. I wonder what Chris Christie said back then. Nothing. Probably said, pass the meatballs. You know, and all the others on TV, I'm sure they were very upset with the minority leader back then, Nancy Pelosi, complaining about the results of the election in 2005. Go ahead.
To widespread confusion and possible disenfranchisement. Disenfranchisement.
Say it 10 times fast, Nancy. So she was very concerned about the voting processes back then, particularly when it comes to Ohio, a key state that Bush won fairly easily. And they're always concerned about it. They want to expand the vote. So when they win, it's fine. When they lose, it's not. It's that simple. And when they lose, they try and destroy a president, as they did with Trump. Nobody's trying to destroy Biden. Biden's he's destroying himself. Should never have been president just because of his mental capacity alone. So there is that. So I just wanted to point that out. It's like the tape that people bring out from, I think it was 2005 as well. Chuck Schumer on the filibuster. This will be a disaster. This will be doomsday to democracy. Goes on, and now it's righteous.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.